Axiom of Choice by Literally Mad Lad on AO3. Episode 23, Chapter 8. All around me are familiar faces. Worn out places. Worn out faces. Katsuki and Mitsuki always get home close to 2 in the morning, which he didn't mind. It was the perfect schedule for him, and the days turned over like clockwork. 3 days in, and he had learned a handful of drink specials that had become the honorary bartender for. Shirney Temples, gin and tonics, and sodas were all designated to him, whether Mitsuki liked it or not. After the third night, when he helped putting up the dinner room tables, while Mitsuki counted her money, she approached him with a wad of cash. "Take it," she said. He stared at it. "You made a fair amount of drinks today, so these tips are for you. Take it." She grabbed his hand out from his side and slapped the cash on it. "What do I do with it?" he said. "What do you... Christ, kid, who raised you?" She laughed. "You buy a shirt, clothes, snacks, whatever. Hell, you could save it up if you like. Don't be worrying about food, though. We've got you covered. Yagi doesn't mind you sneaking food from the kitchen for meals." He didn't quite know what that meant, and he decided that he learned about it soon enough. He was going to keep things, so he had the money to his den above the garage, specifically hid it under the rug that ran the length of the narrow room. The money accumulated. What started as a single corner of the rug turned into rows at the end of the rug, and then all along the perimeter. He started to recognize customers and remember names. Not that he used them. Once he learned the menu, he discovered that their Friday night fish fries were his favorite, and if he could have them every day, he would. "The Fisher Market's just down the road. You can't miss it," one of the customers told him, so he investigated the next day. It was the first time he went out alone without Mitsuki or Yagi, so he was wary of all unfamiliar faces gathered around the market. The market was identified by a massive, weathered wooden sign size of a house. It was shaped like a fireman in the bright red apron holding up a swordfish. Katsuki checked his pocket. Mitsuki said fish was sold by the pound, and he could get as much salmon as he wanted for $10. The place was cold and smelled like coastline, metallic with raw, dead fish. They marveled at them, all laid out on ice, like they were a silver platter just for him. The tank of lobsters was especially compelling, but without his regular teeth, that would be difficult to take a bite out of. He couldn't eat lobster anymore, even if he wanted to. Katsuki pressed his index finger to what remained of his fangs. His canines were still sharp, which he was grateful for. "Looking for something in particular?" the cashier asked, and when Katsuki looked up at the familiar voice, the cashier gasped. "Oh, you're Mitsuki's nephew. The Bakugous and I go way back, so I'll give you a discount, eh?" "Okay," Katsuki said. He pointed to the salmon and raised 2 fingers. The cashier handed him a bag of 2 neatly wrapped salmon in exchange for Katsuki's cash. Katsuki nearly walked away without getting change, and would have kept walking had he not been distracted by conversation behind him. "Been a while." "It has. I'll take a pound for your cod, please." Katsuki blinked. He couldn't make that voice. Every sound Katsuki had heard was so meticulously filed away in his brain that hearing the assistant now was like hearing her just a minute before. Katsuki's eyes snapped in her direction, his eyes locking onto his target. Her hair was tied back into a slick, black ponytail that fell to her mid-back, cascading around a defense knitted scarf. Her breath clouded in front of her when she thanked the cashier and turned to leave. She caught his eye and held it. Her feet stuttered across the ground, heels clicking. An incomprehensible sound squeaked at the back of her throat before the bag nearly slipped out from her hands. She caught it in both arms. "Katsuki?" she breathed. "Oi, Bakugou, your change!" the cashier said, shaking a handful of coins. Katsuki looked at them. The assistant was still staring at him. Katsuki took the change and stuffed it into his pocket. "Thank you," he said to the cashier. "Have a nice day, kid. And tell Mitsuki I said hi, he said. Katsuki nodded and watched the cashier walk off before he was once again confronted by the assistant, standing directly in front of him. Her eyes scanned his face, his shoulders, and down to his legs. Katsuki shifted on his feet awkwardly. Right. The last time they saw each other, Katsuki couldn't stand. Now standing seemed to be all Katsuki did. You... She stared, slowly. She had grown deathly pale. Her skin looked about as gray as the scales on Katsuki's salmon. How? Katsuki hadn't thought about it enough to warrant therapy. Still, he didn't have an answer. I don't know, he said. Your speech has improved a lot, she commented quietly. But you have... She let out a startled, manic laugh and shook her head, staring at his legs. Oh, where's Midoriya? Katsuki frowned. Does he... The cashier said Mitsuki. How do you know Mitsuki? She asked. Considering how much Katsuki had thought about the state of his legs and lack thereof his tail, he hadn't considered ever seeing the assistant again. In fact, he thought more about Deku than he ever did her, and it dawned on him that he didn't want to talk to her. He started walking away, but was grounded to a halt by the assistant seizing his arm. Katsuki, we need to talk. No. He bit back, lips pulled into a familiar snarl. It came out animalistic and unlike anything Katsuki had overserved from humans thus far. It was enough to snap the assistant out of whatever convents heard that Katsuki wasn't, in fact, the predator she used to work with. She dropped her hand. The mortal terror had latched its claws on her expression again, a look he was familiar from. I don't want to talk to you, he said. Leave me alone. He walked off, and this time she didn't pursue him. The moment he was off the market's premises, he paused to collect himself. He could feel the pulsing of his heart all the way down his throat. His lips wavered as he extended slowly. Out of the two of them, it just had to be the assistant. What was she doing here anyways? It wasn't there. Shouldn't Deku have found him by now? Deku should have been back a month ago. But Katsuki hadn't heard anything about him. Granted, he never talked about Deku. The only person who knew Deku was the accomplice, and he wasn't particularly inclined to ask anyone anyways. Surely Deku would find him on his own accord, on his own time. Katsuki had done his due diligence to find the cave again. To no avail. The old man had difficulty keeping up with Katsuki at the river, and was nervous to let Katsuki stray too far up the rapids. The furthest they came was a fork in the river, and Katsuki couldn't be sure which branch he came from. The old man had insisted they head back, so Katsuki obliged. If he couldn't find Deku, then he'll just have to wait for Deku to find him. Unless he doesn't want to bother with me anymore. Katsuki thought, vision blurring. Heat bubbled up behind his eyes and spilled over. He didn't want the accomplice. He wanted Deku back. Katsuki knew he was fully capable of existing on his own. He had proven it by now. He thought it might be easy to continue on the way he had up until this point. If he convinced himself that there was never a chance he'd encounter Deku or the accomplice, then perhaps it really didn't happen. To just forget the cave ever happened. Katsuki rubbed his eyes and continued on. He hurried across the street and along the path that would take him back to Mitsuki's house. It was one bad thought away from falling into the pit he had gone down before he faced with the fork of the river and no clear direction. Seeing Mitsuki, though, helped clear up some of those issues. He could tolerate life here as long as he would inevitably and consequently stumble upon Deku the same time he stumbled upon the accomplice. Mitsuki looked up from the Subaru stop with a faint smile that dropped at whatever expression she saw on his face. Hey, kid. How was the market? Bad, he said. Bad? How so? He swallowed thickly and set the bag of fish on the counter. Can't explain. I know how that feels. Seeing all the dead fish without their eyeballs kinda gets to you, she said, and made a grotesque noise, fingers crawling in the air. Katsuki grunted in response and went back to the side door. When he asked where he was going, he declared that he was going to sleep. It was entirely false, when in fact He did kick off his shoes and crawl into bed. But the matter of fact was this. He was sick with mourning the life he had once had. Could he have survived in the cave? Had he acted too rashly? He regretted not waiting for Deku to return, even if it killed him. Still, that wouldn't stop him from living now, in the constant state of dormant anticipation that would lie in the deep crevice of his mind only to resurface in the moments of salvation. Katsuki groaned under the covers, turning onto his side, with blankets pulled around him. Fuck everything. Shit, you know what just kind of snuck up on me? That next chapter is the last chapter. We only have like 2-3 left. Episodes, that is. Actually, I think we only have 2 left. Okay. That kind of snuck up on me. I didn't mean for that to snuck up on me, but it kind of just did. I'm actually not quite sure what's going to take over the slot. I'm kind of checking right now, but I'm not prepared. Like, at all. I guess what could take over this slot could be... As I said before, I'm not quite sure. What is this one? Todobaku? Todobaku. And then... I think Relationship for Dumbasses is another Todobaku. No, it's a... Okay. Well, we might either have a Todobaku, a Tododekubaku, or, a Tododeku. Either way, we're having Todoroki. Actually, I think that's gonna be the first no, that's not the first Todoroki ship we've had. Todoroki and Sero. Those are my favorite. Todoroki and Sero is my favorite ship. Okay, on to what happened in this chapter, because I'm getting ahead of myself. Fucking bullshit, Bakugou. You could have had the accomplice, the assistant, whatever you want to call her. You could have had Momo help you find Izuku. Ugh! Whatever. Hopefully Momo goes to Izuku, who then Izuku goes to Mitsuki, and you know, all that stuff. Hopefully that's what happens. Ugh. He's Bakugou. I swear to God. Okay, as always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.